I'm calling to order this meeting of the Silver City Town Council. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to come here and be part of the democratic process. The next item on the agenda is changes to the agenda. Do any of the councilors want to make changes? No changes. Next item, number 4, is proclamations. Since the week of September 17 through 23, 2018 is Constitution Week, the town would like to recognize this with a proclamation, and I think Lucy Whitmarsh will accept it. Whereas September 17, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebration which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Ken Ladner, Mayor of the town of Silver City, Grand County, New Mexico, in view of the inherent value of this, do hereby proclaim September 17 through 23, 2018 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution in 1787 by diligently protecting the freedom guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. On behalf of the town of Silver City and the town of Silver City Councilor, I'd like to give you this proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you have anybody to take pictures, we could do that. Would you like to say a few words?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'd just very much like to thank the town council and the mayor for the proclamation from the town, and we're here representing the local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, which is a patriotic organization in our community. And one of the things that we do like to bring to people's attention is to remind them of the importance of the Constitution. So thank you very much.
If you want to, let's take a picture with us giving you the Constitution. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is council comments. First is Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. About a month ago, I was up at the senior citizens area, and I happened to see 2 young ladies there, and they were out of their vehicle. And now, it was told to me that there is a rumor going on that they want to build a homeless shelter there by the senior citizens area. And I have talked to some people around the area, And if it's a rumor, it's going to be a very strong rumor, but we will strongly oppose that, of having homeless people there by the senior area. Again, it's only a rumor, but it's a very strong rumor, and we will definitely try and not let it go through when it comes before the council, if it comes before the council. Also, thanks to the Sewer City Streets for doing a wonderful job during this past couple of weeks of the rainy season. And it has been very, very rough on everybody. I've had, I'm sure all of us have had some calls from different people about their property in areas, and it's just a situation where the rains came and there's nothing that we can do too much about it. Just do the best that we can. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Amon Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have one item, and that is that I want to thank all of the town staff who came out, the police chief, other officers, and the 155 people and all the volunteers who made the District 2 Territorial Volunteer Day such a fabulous experience. The Play Street was wonderful, so thank you all for making it happen.
Thank you. Councilor Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually want to thank Councilor Amon Smith for the Play Street. It was a fabulous event, the Territorial Charter Day was in District 2, and it was really reminiscent of when I grew up in the Midwest. There was no boundaries. People played in the streets. And we actually used to run up and down everybody's backyards, go in and out of houses, in the several blocks that encompassed the area that I lived in, because there weren't any restrictions, and the Play Street just really reminded me of that, and having adults and children and everyone out there just enjoying themselves and enjoying, the environment in the street. And it was just a great afternoon and morning, so thank you. I've had lots of folks contacting me because the Mountain View Apartments, which you can see being built up there where Hudson and Sil Heights Boulevard comes in, or where Highway 90 and 180 come in just off Juniper. So that sort of really straight, sort of tall thing that's going up is the elevator. But I just wanted to reiterate what has already been in several newspaper articles, and we talked about it here at the council. That is a affordable housing, not assisted living, affordable housing for seniors 62 and older. And I know lots of people are eager to get in there and to put in their application, because that's what I'm getting. Lots of contact about that. And I wish I could say that they're taking them, but they're not. But I would ask you to, if you have any questions, to contact Jamie Embick at the Community Development Department. She's the director. And her direct line there is 534-6349, or you can go on the town's website and get her email, to send her an email. But she can keep you up to date. One of the things that I did request from staff and from Mr. Brown is that when they get to the point where they will be taking applications, since this is something that the town worked on, the council did this together to provide the land and to do that since it's affordable housing, is that we could put a link on our website to the Bethel Corporation's website so people could link on to get the applications and things like that. But we don't anticipate that they're even going to be taking applications till March of next year, of 2019. So I know everybody's eager, and I would love to be able to apply as well. Unfortunately, I would have 2 years to wait to do that. So, given that I'll be 60 this year, so it's a little premature for me to apply. But it's a great opportunity, and they will be making selections. And just know that we will try to do everything we can to make sure everyone's aware of that, and that we have some publicity. I'm sure that they will too, that they're taking applications in the process and everything for doing that. I also want to thank the road crews for everything they've been doing during these torrential rains that we've been having. They're trying to keep up, and I know that there was quite a bit of debris in the roads, and I appreciate what they've done. I also want to mention that we also have an issue over here on Highway 180 that a resident in town did a Facebook, so if you see it on Facebook, there's a little recording of a slide that is just across from the Echo Ford, out here on 180, and it's a slide that's relatively new, and it's coming down towards the sidewalk and the roadway. So I sent Mr. Brown, the manager, the video, and my understanding is that since that is state highway, and it's the Department of Transportation, that they've been contacted, and now the town's waiting for a response, and I guess I'd just say we're not going to hold our breath. So everybody watch and just kind of see that. There's a big, huge white slab that has moved down in Other Rock, and I do believe it's because of all the rain. So, I know that our folks will make sure that if something comes down, that they'll block off that area, but right now, it's, as all of our highways that go through the city, even though they may have names that are street names, they are actually owned and controlled by the Highway Department, the Department of Transportation of the state, not by the town of Silver City. So we really don't get to do anything without their okay. And the last thing is I wanted to let everybody know that I have heard you, I have talked with you in the stores, I have about any number of things, including the rock slide thing. Out on the street, in the neighborhood, I've seen your emails and your phone calls, and I really appreciate folks getting in touch with me and understanding why I may not necessarily reply back. I'm still, although I'm not wearing bandages on my hands, I'm still under restrictions on what I'm allowed to do with them because the bones aren't knitting properly. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that I have been listening and I have been reading your emails and I have been talking with y'all. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Council President, Council Connell.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to congratulate the Silver City Fire Department on reaching 50 years as a fully paid department. Chief Lambert and his crew had a wonderful celebration on Saturday where the community got to come and hear a little bit about what the fire department does and also about the history of the fire department. Assistant Chief Jeff Fowl has been working really hard for a couple of years now to put together the history of the department. And it's really interesting to see how many local families are connected to that department. So hopefully he'll continue his research and maybe write a book or something because it's quite interesting. Also, I'd like to congratulate Jerry O'Neill, who was named Firefighter of the Year. We appreciate what all the entire fire department does. I know a lot of times you don't necessarily hear that, but we really do appreciate you. I also just want to remind people that school has started, so there are a lot of little pedestrians right now that are going back and forth to school. So if you could be a little more diligent about how you drive when you're driving through school zones, that would be really great. And the last thing is I want to congratulate the Copper Country Senior Olympics. They have wrapped up their season for this year. They had several Olympians who went to state a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of them came back with medals. Several of them also qualified for national games, which will be held in Albuquerque next year. Well, thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Any other council comments? I had a couple of comments. I would like to welcome Fire Chief Lambert and Police Chief Portillo here tonight. Two separate citizens approached me during the last month, and both of them talked about police stops that they saw. In one case, the person was following a big diesel truck down Swan Street that was blowing a lot of black smoke out of the exhaust. And they were thinking, boy, where are the police now? Just about that time, a police car turned onto Swan Street, and she was happy to report that they were pulled over. Another citizen reported something similar, where a truck that had been blowing out heavy clouds of black smoke was stopped by the police. And that's something we've been dealing with for a long time, and thank you and your force for that. And Chief Lambert, thank you for your work. I know it's been a busy month for y'all with fires, and it's a dangerous profession that both of you are in, and thank you for serving our community. I appreciate it, and we all do. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of July 24, 2018 regular meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of the town of Silver City of July 24th, 2018.
Is there a second? Councilor Madison?
Mr. Mayor, second the motion stated.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public input. Now, we have two items on the agenda that I think a lot of you are here to talk about. One is the ordinance that deals with bees, and the other is the ordinance that Councilor Ray is bringing forth. So I'd like to ask you, if you fall into one of those two categories, to hold your public input until we get to those items, and then I'll give you a chance to have public input. So now I'll take public input that doesn't pertain to either one of those two items. Do we have any public input? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is reports. The first report is the final lodger's tax and tourism report by the Executive Director of the Silver City Art and Cultural District, Ms. Colleen Martin.
Thank you very much.
I'm hoping that everybody had a chance to look at my very long report with lots of statistics in it. I know you've got an extremely busy agenda tonight, so I was thinking perhaps rather than try to present all of this material, I would ask if anyone had any questions to start out.
Any questions? Councilman Smith has a comment.
So, one of the things that came forth in your report was that you discussed how you began to see increased engagement in some of the social media. And I know that the ACD had really focused a lot on print media, and then recently social media is coming up. What sort of like distal or other kinds of effects do you see from using or really increasing the social media? Is there more outreach? Is there more folks coming in and saying they saw it? Could you explain a little bit there?
Well, the Visitor Center tries to compile as many statistics as they can about people who are actually coming into the Visitor Center. And one of the things that we've noticed is that the internet continues to become the more and more dominant in terms of why people have heard about Silver City. And when people say the internet, you're not exactly sure what they mean. But our statistics for our Facebook reach and engagement, our Instagram reach and engagement, and our website engagement have all gone up spectacularly over the last year. And that's about all we can say. At least it gives us some sort of statistics as opposed to print media where you never really know, unless there are response cards or something.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you had a couple of reports.
Chief Portillo's has a report right now.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Just wanted to give a brief report on some of the training that we've been doing that involves active shooter, which has been a hot topic this last year and a half and for a while now. Just want the public to be aware we're up to date with it. We're keeping up with it. We had a drill back in February, if you all remember, that involved active shooter training with the Forest Service, which was very successful. We were able to test the system, and there was a lot of things we did right, we did wrong, but we want to try to continue doing those drills. We also provided training to every school in the district, which also involves assessments of the school, which is the security of the school, some of the failures that they have that we can help with to try to get it more secure. Last Tuesday, myself, Lieutenant Grazan, and Officer Manny Howdy did a presentation for the entire Silver School District staff, which involved, again, an active shooter refresher, trying to help them put policies into place, procedure. Mr. Brown, Audie Brown, the superintendent, worked a lot with us to try to get this stuff going, and so we can keep up with it. Also, PNM, we've also done a presentation for them, and they're also planning on wanting to do some type of a drill. So not only does it help the businesses, the schools, which is very important, but also keeps us fresh with our training. Something to add to that, Principal Alvarez in La Plata has created a little substation for us up there, an office, to where if we have to do some type of paperwork, we can go into that substation. Of course, we don't want to be there for a significant amount of time, but it's for high visibility. So I wanted the public to be aware of that that's been established, and we've started that actually. And on top of what Councilor Gano said, yeah, please be aware of pedestrian traffic, the school zones, because we are going to have zero tolerance for the safety of the children. Thank you.
Questions for Chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Next is Ken there. Oh, you didn't have the report ready? Okay. So I guess Chief Lambert is going to be involved in some of the NOIs later on, so he'll talk about
Okay.
it.
Anything else, Mr. Brown?
That's it.
Okay, next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Item 10A is the approval/disapproval of ordinance number 1268, an ordinance proposing various amendments to the municipal code regarding boards and committees of the town. And this is presented by Councilor Amon Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We talked about this NOI a bit earlier, but I'll refresh everyone why I was motivated to do this. So the town of Silver City over a number of decades have put together a variety of citizen volunteer participation structures for citizens to be engaged, to help advise and maybe do some research, maybe work on some projects with people in the local government. And I know, and you know, that citizens who take their time to volunteer want to do work that is valuable and useful. And so they want their participation to mean something. And I know that these citizen volunteers are motivated to use their knowledge, skills, and abilities, and their networks into other parts of the community to provide advice and support to the town. So I've talked with various folks who've been involved in citizen volunteer groups, as well as drawing on my background as both an academic, working as a consultant to organizations in terms of group dynamics. And there are a few fundamental changes that this NOI, when and if it is approved, will result in how citizen engagement is structured. The first has to do with the current ordinance that permits a advisory volunteer to appeal a removal due to not coming. So all of the groups say that if a person has 3 unexcused absences, they'll be removed. Well, what that essentially means is if a person just stops coming, they should not be a member of that board anymore. There used to be kind of an appeal process, but I realize, and I think that you would realize, that a person doesn't have a right to the role on that group, but rather they serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And so having an appeal process just didn't make sense. If a person's not coming, how do we know that they're going to come? If they can work out some sort of agreement with the members of the group, they can do that in advance. The next global change involved that there were many written stone requirements for monthly meetings, and some of the ordinance language actually specified a specific day. I think that is too stringent. And so now there is a requirement for quarterly meetings, because people need to have consistency. And if a group wants to meet more than quarterly, they certainly can. But it takes that burden of going to a meeting where you know that really nothing is going to be done. And I think we all would hate that. Also, some groups are reduced into a more realistic and effective size of five voting members and 2 ex officio members, for a total of 7 people in an advisory group. Decades of group research has noted that that's the most effective size for working groups. So we don't need members of 9 or 12 people. 5 to 7 is really pretty good. And we changed the term advisory board to community advisory groups in some of the areas. And that's because that term board is laden with governance ideas, and that's not what they really are. They're advisory groups. That also mirrors the language that is used in some of the professional organizations, for example, from the museum, and Kim can correct me, but from the library also. The state organization and then the professional organization uses that language. So we're just using consistent language. Another big change is to what was the Incentive Review Committee, which should really just be a committee that is only put together and meets when there's an application for an economic development project. And since there has not been one, we should not have a standing committee for something that's not there. So I think that makes perfect sense. A couple of other language has been taken out. We never actually had a golf advisory committee, and I believe for a couple of decades haven't really had a park advisory committee. So we just changed those. So that's the rationale. Was that too much information? Probably a lot. But with that, I would like to move to approve ordinance number 1268 and ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 6, Boards and Commissions, Chapter 12, Article 2, Division 2, Cemetery Board, Chapter 16, Article 2, Division 2, Incentive Review Committee, Chapter 26, Article 2, Library Board, Chapter 30, Article 2, Museum Board, Chapter 36, Article 3, Parks and Recreation Board, Chapter 36, Article 4, Golf Course Board of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code relating to advisory boards, committees, and commissions of the Town of Silver City.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilor Bevison?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please, then.
Councilor Bennett.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson. Aye. Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Coniff. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item under unfinished business is 10B, the approval/disapproval of ordinance number 1269, an ordinance amending section 12-7-9 through 12-7-9.10, off-highway motor vehicles, definitions, etc., of the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Code, adopted as a Silver City Traffic Ordinance in Chapter 50, Section 50-1 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. And we have come down to what will be the final vote. And I just hope that we have tried to satisfy, we worked very hard at this NOI here. We tried to satisfy what people wanted, what the police department would like to see, what we would like to see. And I wasn't the only one working on it. Some of those guys that are out here, they supported it very well. I'm sure they talked to some of you councilors also. I did have a small conversation. Well, I had a conversation with Chief Portillo this morning, and he told me what his feelings were, and he's against it. But he also told me that if this was to pass, he would be able to help us in doing some sort of training. Correct, Mr. Portillo? Chief Portillo?
What I explained was like an educational period to try to get people in compliance if people have passed it.
Okay, and I did tell Mr. Portillo, Chief Portillo, that I would talk to Mr. Trent Doan, and that maybe we could figure out something, put it in a small pamphlet, and give it to the police department, and give it to these people that are trying to, if it passes, to make sure that be aware. I also mentioned, and this one's going to you, Mr. Skavron, I also mentioned a while back that if this thing was to pass, if that individual is under 18 years of age, they will get ticketed. My comment to Mr. Skavron was that if it was possible, if not possible, to see if we could also cite the parents on it for allowing them. And I would like Mr. Skavron to, if possible, to say something to that effect.
There is precedent for holding parents responsible for the actions of their children, minor children. In truancy, parents can be held liable, and if the child commits a tort, civil damage, the parents can be held liable. I believe there's a dollar amount I believe it's something like $4,000. For the actual ticket, where the parent has done no wrong other than they gave permission to the child to drive it, I'm not sure if we can do that. If it was negligent, if the parent knew that the child was drinking, or if the child was otherwise impaired, or if the child was below a certain age, or saw the child driving off without a helmet, without a seatbelt, and said, okay, go ahead, that would be a different situation. But to hold the parent absolutely responsible for the traffic violations of the child, it's a bit iffy. And I think that we left it where that was not in this ordinance. Now, as the law develops, or if I learn more about it, we can always come back and suggest an amendment to it. But there is responsibility for negligence of the parent. But holding the parent criminally liable merely for the child using or creating a traffic offense, I have some problem with that.
Okay, thank you. And also, Mr. Skavron and I, we did work, especially Mr. Skavron, to try and see if this NOI would pass. To the best of my knowledge, it's probably one of the most hardest ones in the state of New Mexico, correct? If the NOI was to pass?
I think that the attention that you put into safety concerns and the concerns of the public made this one of the best ordinances in the state. I think it goes well beyond the minimum regarding safety and regulation.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just, also, if it's to pass, I will make an amendment, we will make an amendment saying that if it's allowable, a half hour before sunrise and right at sunset. And I took this into consideration from Councilor Pedersen. And I know Councilor Emerson Smith had some questions or some concerns. So,
does anyone have any questions of Councilor Ray?
I'll save my comments until after for discussion.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'd like to give the public a chance for input. Now, in looking at the list, according to city ordinance, the maximum amount of time per person for public input is 5 minutes. And with all of the people that have signed up tonight, if we did that, we would go way beyond the 20 minutes, which is the maximum allowed by the ordinance. So what I'd like to do is to ask you, I want to give everybody a chance who's come to give some public input, but I'm going to ask you to try and keep it brief and to the point, so that everybody can have a chance to make their opinion known. So with that, the first person that I have on the list is Trent Bowen.
Hello, my name is Trent Ball, and I'm a resident here in Silver City. I want to voice my support for the amendment and also let you know, I just penned a letter to the county commission. They are sending notification to the state to add additional routes for UTVs outside of here, linking some of the popular trails to Pinos Altos, to Saddle Rock, and out by Night Cabin. So there's a lot more outside of the county that's trying to push this effort because they do see the value in the tourism dollars that will come in. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Mike Ferris?
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Mike Ferris, and I'm a resident of Silver City and also chairman of the town's Trails and Open Space Advisory Committee, which you created earlier this year. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the advisory committee to oppose this ordinance this evening and advising you disapprove it. We've had considerable discussion about this ordinance as proposed, and the group advised me to come tonight and tell you the reasons why we're not supporting it. The first is that we've been spending a considerable amount of time looking at San Vicente Trail and Open Space Park, and we're quite taken back by the amount of impact and damage that ATVs and four-wheel drive vehicles have done to this rather pristine area, kind of unique area of riparian environment, and lots of birds and different kinds of wildlife, and some of the biggest cottonwood trees that you'll ever see. So it's a unique kind of place, and to have ATVs in there kind of tearing it up is a problem. And we've been dismayed at the number of places that the fences have been cut, and gates have been, locks have been taken, clipped, and even some places mowed down.
Mr. Ferris, can you kind of get to several points? Yeah.
Okay. So the first reason is that we see that it's a problem for the town enforcing, keeping ATVs off of those places, particularly San Vicente. We think this ordinance will make things even worse, because once they're on city streets, they have even easier access. The second reason is that we don't see how this ordinance really applies to Silver City, because the state enabling legislation the intent of it was to provide for communities that do have off-road vehicle parks where they're permitted to travel between those parks on city streets, so that they wouldn't have to reload their vehicles on trailers and then transport them. We don't have that situation in Silver City. We don't have any ATV parks that are where there's permitted. There doesn't seem to us to be any reason to have them be on city streets. There's lots of places to do it elsewhere in this area. So those are the summary of our comments, and thank you for taking this up.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Next, and I can't read the last name, but the first name is Teresa. Come on down.
Good evening, members of the council.
Could you tell us your last name?
Gurr, G-U-R-R. Good evening, members of the council, mayor, chief, and the staff. My name is Teresa Gurr, and I reside part-time here in Silver City. I have family that lives here, and I would like to voice my opinion in favor of the ordinance of 1269. For the last 2 weeks, I had the opportunity to experience what a side-by-side was, and it was the greatest time I ever had. I'm 63-year-old, I'm female, and I have never had so much fun. I've ridden motorcycles and everything else, but this was the greatest thing ever. So I'm just asking you to please pass it, give us a chance to show what Silver City can do besides being downers about it and stuff, and enjoy life a little bit, and please vote yes for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Gamboa?
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity. The name is Al Gamboa. I'm sure you've heard the name plenty of times up here. But anyways, I am here to support, full support for the ordinance Councilor Ray has proposed. There's been plenty of time to do a lot of research, a lot of addressing of the opponent's side of the issues, and I think with the public input meeting that we had, we actually came together where it is a demographic that uses the OHVs that would typically be a lot more careful and certainly not universally encompassing the troublemakers, let's say. And I think it is a group that could help overall in protecting our public sacred places. So like I say, full support. I don't want to stay up here too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Danny Vasquez?
I'm Danny Vasquez, and I'm a lifelong resident of Silver City and Grant County, and I'm here because I support ordinance number 1269 for the use of side-by-sides on city streets. We're talking not exceeding 35 miles per hour in the city, not to be used on highways outside city limits. Now, I contend that any motorized vehicle is as safe as the operator using it. Now, I think that you can compile data or a survey on, say, motorcycles, and I would think that you would find that it way exceeds the data found on side-by-sides or ROVs, and yet they're still being used on city streets, and some of them are unbearably noisy, as some of you know. I think if they meet all traffic safety regulations, I think, and they have licenses and they're registered insurance, I think that they're just as safe as some of the electric cars being used in Silver City. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Madrid.
Yeah, my name's Eddie Madrid, and my uncle pretty much summarized it, but I'm in full support of this ordinance. The other thing that I have is, I don't understand why a lot of them are against it. When I go downtown and I see a lot of vehicles out there that are equal to the four-wheeler, side-by-sides, they're characterizing it as a four-wheeler. We're not a four-wheeler. It's a side-by-side, and like I say, you got insurance, you got all the regulations, safety regulations and everything in order. I don't see any problem. If we're going to clean it up, let's clean up a lot of the other stuff that's running around town that's not allowed, if we don't allow the four-wheelers in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madrid. Some of you came in after I picked up the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the ordinance?
Mayor, councilors, staff, my name is Richard Ray. I'm Sam Ray's brother. I'm in favor of this ordinance. I think we should give it a shot. We don't know until we try. So I'm in favor of you passing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, yes, come forward, please. Identify yourself when you address us.
I'm on the list. I'm Nancy Cliff. How are you this evening? I submitted comments on both the original and the superseding version of this ordinance. I stand in opposition to it. Mostly, I'm concerned about the fact that even though there are lots of safeguards that are mentioned, in order to ticket somebody, they have to be seen violating and they have to be pursued. And the police department, I don't think, has the equipment to pursue these vehicles off the city streets. So I think I made that pretty clear in my comments. I'm not sure how it's a public convenience that these vehicles are going to be authorized. I don't know how they conserve energy or enhance public safety. And I included a story from Wichita, Kansas. An officer spotted someone driving a four-wheeler in the 1100 block of West MacArthur, but they went off-road before the officer could apprehend them. The officer was unable to pursue them and lost contact. So even though there are all kinds of safeguards enumerated in the ordinance, if the violation isn't seen, that person can just go anywhere he wants to get away from the officer. That's my primary point, and I also agree with Mike Ferris that, we've put a lot of time and energy into improving and developing trails, and it would be a matter of great dismay if those trails continue to be deteriorating. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other, come forward, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Chief Portillo, staff. My name is Ray Teran. I'm for your approval of this amendment. Thank you, Joe. The scenarios put forth about road drivers and the ATVs, I was up here once before, and I said ATVs give the four-wheelers a black eye. The UTV drivers, we're older people. We're more responsible. We've shown to be responsible. We have insurance. We have safety features in all our vehicles. We're asking for an opportunity to exercise it. We're not, and we can't stop everyone. I can't do your job, Chief Portillo, but I can help. And that's all I ask, is give us a chance, cruise around town, let me helmet my granddaughter, strap her down, take her to the post office or to a drugstore, cruise around. They don't come very often. But when they do, if I don't have a chance to go to the hills, that's a good ride, joy ride. And, it's being responsible. That's bottom line, it's being responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other that want to come forward, please?
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak. I'm Tony Garcia, lifetime resident of Silver City. And some of you people have four-wheelers and UTVs. They're completely different. And that's what this lady was talking about, not being able to chase it. They're a lot narrower. These vehicles that we're talking about, UTVs, have everything that Mr. Ray has talked about. All of us, most of our owners are responsible older people, and they do have insurance. Mine has insurance. You were accusing them of being noisy. We brought them. We proved to you that they're not as noisy as you guys thought it was. They were very quiet, actually. And we'd like to have the opportunity to be able to prove to you that hopefully that you pass this and that we are for it. A lot of people are, so give us a chance, and they're completely different. Thank you.
Thank you. There's someone else in the back?
Okay, my name is Olga Ray, Councilor Ray's wife, and I just want to thank everybody that's been supporting and being for all this. We've really had a really good time with our new side-by-side. We'd really like to be able to use it legally in town. We have to go out to the mountains to use this. But if some of you haven't ridden on them, try it. You'll enjoy it. Just expressing my support for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Come forward, please.
Evening, councilors, police, everybody here. We're getting the ATVs keep coming up, and we are not speaking about ATVs. There's OHVs that we're really shooting for right here in this process. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that there's been a lot of traffic in town from out-of-staters on the side-by-sides. So I'm not sure how the police treated them, but I saw them buzzing around, and there were several couples, older generation people, buzzing around on the side-by-sides in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And they got they're tagged like a little motorcycle plate on it, but they're buzzing around, just moving around with traffic and not bothering anybody, just going about their business. But lots of sightings of them, so I don't know how you guys have been treating them. I have no idea. All I know is that they have been going to the restaurants and whatnot, and obviously everybody has noticed all the transporting of the side-by-sides. There's 1 or 2 of them. There's Texas plates. There's a lot of out-of-state plates buzzing through with them. We'd like to capture them to spend some money here in Grant County, buzz around in their vehicle, and enjoy Silver City, because we're very well known for our weather. We're a destination. And we need to understand that Silver City is a destination, and yes, let's let our little side-by-sides come by. We're, like everybody else has said, we're just moving with the traffic. We're not trying to break the speed limit or anything. It's just transportation. A lot of people don't understand that it's a tool for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve ordinance number 1269 and ordinance amending section 12-7-9 through 12-7-9.10 off-highway motor vehicle definitions et al. of the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Code adopted as the Silver City Traffic Ordinance in Chapter 50, Section 50-1 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Councilor Kano?
I'll second that motion as stated.
Have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments or discussion from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I wanted to say I really appreciated all of the citizens who contacted me and talked with me. It was really enlightening to talk with the folks who have these side-by-sides and to go look at them and listen to them. And I appreciate your work. I do want to say that in terms of written comments to me, it's been running about 40-1 against. So I'm kind of surprised that many people who simply wrote and left me voice messages saying, please do not vote in favor of this, didn't show up tonight. But that's how public information goes. I have a number of concerns, and I'm just going to go ahead and speak them freely because it's important to me that everyone know. First of all, I want to make it again clear that this proposed change does not meet the spirit of the state legislation of SB 270, which was sponsored by Senator Stephen Nebo in the 2016 legislative session and was signed by Governor Martinez at the end of that session. Senator Nebo a number of times said that he wanted to have these vehicles, utility vehicles, be able to drive because of agricultural use. And we don't have any farms inside of Silver City. And when the governor signed the bill, she said this: "I want to be clear that the intent of this bill is not to replace or substitute vehicle usage for day-to-day transportation. Local governments should use this authority sparingly and only after careful consideration of the community needs and the risks associated." Second, and this is something that's really important, currently these side-by-sides are not considered motor vehicles under the authority of the Federal Department of Transportation. So what are they? They're considered off-road vehicles or recreational off-road vehicles. So they're not issued a standard license plate. They're instead issued a sticker, which the MVD issues. All of that money then goes to the MVD, and it's not actually a license plate. It's a thing that says that the owner of the RV wants to seek permission to drive them on paved streets. So if the council were to pass this ordinance, we would essentially be creating within our municipality a separate category of automobile that can drive without the MVD requirements imposed. I think that leads us into some danger. And I think that it leads us specifically into, as our town attorney spoke, about essentially creating a new class of automobile, one which doesn't have a differential and has other issues, that we open ourselves to future litigation. Because the manufacturers, the interest groups, and all of the safety organizations have all urged this council, by sending letters, that will not allow those vehicles to be driven on our town streets. So if we say we're going to do it anyway, I think we're setting ourselves up for some potential concerns. I too have concerns about costs and ability to enforce. There is no revenue stream coming to the town for the use of these vehicles. The sticker goes to the MVD. The police are already stretched fairly thin, and so if they are going to really be, looking to make sure that these vehicles are appropriate, that's going to be an extra burden without really any extra revenue. Now, one of the folks who was really interested in this proposed a revenue model, which is not in this particular ordinance. And I think that having a revenue model that would ensure that the town didn't be able to afford the enforcement for an entirely new class of automobile created because of municipality law would be a really important thing to do. And I want to say again that there is clearly still confusion within the user populace about what a town street is and what a state highway is. 180, 90, and 15 cannot be driven on. You can't drive on it. You can drive across, but you can't drive on them. So you can't go to Walmart. You might be able to go to the post office and come over Brewer Hill, but you can't drive on 180. And that's really important to still recognize that those roads are under the auspices of the New Mexico Department of Transportation, which has a very complex process that needs to be followed if indeed a portion of any state highway would want to be designated by a local government. This full process includes demonstrating exactly what recreational areas you're going to be getting to and from driving on these paved roads. So it doesn't say, do the citizens want to use these vehicles to run errands in town? Instead it says, are there proximal roads to recreational areas right proximal to the town that then these vehicles can use? If you look at maps, there are no designated recreational areas inside or proximal to the town. And I still wonder about the overall intent about what are the overall common good reasons for such an ordinance being passed. And I haven't seen any backed up data that shows that this would actually benefit the whole community. And I do want to let Danny know that I saw the police stopping some of those ROVs from out of town because they are not legal in our town. Without compelling evidence that opening up our town-paved streets to recreational off-road vehicles is truly a full public benefit, it gives the perception that this is really being pushed by a particular advocacy group. And that is in itself strictly forbidden by the New Mexico DOT law. You have to demonstrate that there is a large community benefit for recreation for this really to be an applicable ordinance under New Mexico law. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councilor Benson?
So I actually would like to thank Councilman Smith. I don't really have to state similar comments to what she made, although I want to bring up two things. The first thing I want to do is a year plus ago, I guess almost 2 years ago when it was first introduced, I brought to Mr. Scarvin's attention my concern with the fact that the manufacturers of the ROVs and various recreational off-highway vehicle associations and the consumer advocacy group state that these are not to be operated on paved roads. And the concern I had that I brought up was the fact that it states in the manufacturer's information that if you place a child in the vehicle, the child or the passenger must have its back to the back of the seat, its feet on the floor, and be able to reach the bar they're supposed to hold. And there are no provisions for what I've seen in other communities in Arizona for how to put a baby car seat in them. There are no provisions for that because they are not to be used in that manner. And I guess my concern is if this ordinance passes and we create this new set of vehicles that are currently by their manufacturers stated not to be used on paved roads, and people are driving passengers like children's seats, things like that, what recourse do our officers have? I mean, you can have all the safety things that you want, but there are no guidelines for how those children or smaller adults or babies are supposed to be restrained safely in those vehicles because the manufacturer says not to do that, not to allow passengers like that. What liability is the town potentially going to have in a rollover or any other thing? I'm not saying about head-on collision because it's clear that those sorts of collisions rarely happen on paved roads. It's rollovers where the occupant and the passengers, a high percentage of children, are pinned or thrown from the vehicle, from ROVs. Yes, I'm asking you.
The first answer is I don't know what the consequences, what the legal liabilities will be. This is something that is developing. I have not seen any cases. I can only apply common sense to it. If the manufacturer says, don't do this, and then a government says, it's okay, go do it, what's the consequence of that when something happens, when somebody gets hurt? And names the town for allowing a vehicle that everybody knew was limited to off-road by the manufacturer. He tells you. But you go ahead and you ignore that warning and say, we're going to ignore the designers and the manufacturer's caution, and we're going to permit it. My gut feeling is that the city has some potential liability or complicity. But I can't point to a case that says that. I can only just mention the logic of it. So yes, there's always a risk. The city probably would be named in a lawsuit. Whether the town would win or lose, who knows? But I can just apply logic and common sense to it, and looking at other areas of law. If a gun manufacturer manufactures a gun and says, when you clean the gun, make sure it's cleared, not loaded, and then you pass a law saying, clean guns however you want to, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but it's kind of in the same class. You're overriding the cautionary comments of the manufacturer and designer, and you're doing it as a group, you're doing it in the name of the government. I really don't know whether a court would hold the government being complicit or negligent. I don't know. But the issue is out there, and it'll be determined as more and more of these ordinances are passed, and when the accidents start to happen, if they do, there'll be some creative attorney who will make an argument and maybe win with it. And I hope it's not this town, but it could be.
Thank you. I just want to, before I ask the chief to actually stand up and state his position, I do want to commend everyone that has worked on this ordinance. It is the best it can be right now. My concerns echo those of Councilor Amon Smith in the sense that there are these manufacturer warnings. There is the intent of the original law, that it needs to be proximal or, just adjacent to the town's borders, city limits, and or a recreational area like in Farmington that's within it.
3 of them.
Yeah, they have 3 that are within the town's borders, which we don't have any. Or they're proximal where they just need to go across the street. And then we have the other issue of having 3 state highways come through here, that it's incredibly difficult to get from one side of town to the other, or, as has been mentioned, to Walmart or to go somewhere without actually driving a portion of the way on those highways right now. And I think that the process that the state requires is really, really involved. I do think that what Councilor Ray and all the folks that have spoken have done is what you've done by making sure that they don't use these items on trails and open spaces is commendable, because that was a very large concern of many people, and that they have to abide by motor vehicle rules and things like that. But I do have that concern that's just been expressed to Councilor Scavron, who then explained that we could be potentially liable. But I also want to find out directly from the chief exactly why he is in opposition to this ordinance, because I feel I have to take into consideration duly what our chief of police has to say about whether they can enforce this or not, especially since we would be moving to creating a new class of vehicle on our town roads. So, Mr. Mayor, with your permission.
Mayor, City Council, I do want to thank the public. I appreciate all their input on it. I did have a discussion with Mr. Ray, but I'm still opposed to it. I am against it. What it comes down to is an overall public safety issue, like I talked about before. There isn't any data out there, but I think that we're going to have problems with it. I think that there's an issue possibly if kids are riding in it. I think we're going to have issues with them being traveled on state highways. I think that we will have issues with pursuits, even though we're limited what we can pursue. There's still some criteria that we are able to pursue those vehicles. On top of what you have already mentioned, manufacturers suggest they're to be used off-highway. And I feel strongly about that. That's what they're built for. That's what they're made for. Like I said before, in the mountains, there's a recreational off-highway vehicle association that specifically says they're to be avoided on paved surfaces. They're supposed to be used off-highway. That's why they're called off-highway vehicles. Again, like I spoke to Mr. Ray about, I just want the public to be aware that if it does pass, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to work with the public to make it as safe as possible, make it work. We'll have an educational period, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, to try to get people into compliance, provide them with information. We need to make pamphlets to hand out that information. Just want the public to be aware that I'm willing to work with them if you do decide to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I yield the floor.
Any other comments? Councilor Kano.
I think we're all pretty much prepared to vote already, so I'm not going to go into my whys and why nots. I just want to thank every single person who has been sitting through these meetings for several months. I know that sometimes it's difficult. I know you all have families and other things that you could be doing, and I appreciate the fact that you've continued to come and you haven't just stayed your case and never come back again. So please continue to stay involved with other issues that we have before us too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kano. Councilor Ray, do you?
I do. Thank you guys, the ones that were for it, and thank you guys, the ones who are against it. All your comments were taken into a lot of consideration, not just by myself, but by everybody. And I know it's a hard situation, and it's not about money. It has never been about money, as Councilor and Mr. Smith mentioned here, of revenues for the town. To me, it'd be a quality of life. Why not? We have other things that we have done for smaller things and give them a quality of life. Our mission has a mission there, a mission statement, a quality of life. Are there a bunch of us? Maybe so. On for it. And there's a lot of people that are out there that are willing to do the things that have to be done. It is a quality of life. We have given people chances, the gay parade, the gay people. That's their quality of life. We can, other people have something downtown, that's their quality of life. We're asking to have a side-by-side. What is our quality of life? And I understand it's a hard situation, but a lot of these people have spoken against it. Originally, they're not even here from Grand County, they're not even here from Silver. And they're trying to make this town here something that they left to be something that they want to see here. We are local citizens here. We are born and raised here, our own families. And yet you guys are against us. Why? Is it that much of a safety issue? It's not. It could be, but it's not, because we are very responsible. I know we're responsible, and I can see it in your faces that we're responsible. We're asking for a chance. Every ordinance that we have here in the town is always, we can always go back to it. I've asked to see if we could do it for a year's time, just to try it for a year's time. If it doesn't work, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves. Is that too much to ask? No, it's not. I don't think it is. So, give us a shot, give us a chance, and we will prove to you that we are responsible. We are not going to go on trails. We're not going to go to Boston Hill. We're not going to go to San Vicente Creek. We're not going to do that. We have, just like Trent Jones said earlier, that he checked with the state. That's our next move, is to see if we can incorporate the DOT to see if we can use the state highways. And then if they allow it, I don't think you'll see that many people here in downtown. I think you'll see them more around, cruising around in their side-by-side. You heard from the Chamber of Commerce President, Mr. Scott Terry King, that he had questions, inquiries, if people were allowed to do their side-by-sides here. He said a couple of years ago there was nothing like that. Now there is. Why can't we take that into consideration? Let's try it. And we'll show the people that we are very responsible. And anyway, thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from all of us, whether we pass it or don't pass it. But thank you anyway.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Roll call, please, Ann. Would you go slow so you...
Councilor Kano.
Aye.
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Amos Smith.
Nay.
Councilor Bedison.
Nay.
For the past quite a few number of months, as we've gone through these discussions and talked about this issue, I had a feeling that it might come down to the mayor casting a deciding vote. That's why I get paid the big bucks, and that's why the council gets paid all the big bucks. But before I do cast my vote, I do want to say that I appreciate, really from the bottom of my heart, all those who have spoken in favor and in opposition to this ordinance. And I want to thank you for coming to the council meetings, and I want to thank you for putting all the time and energy that you have into making your particular case be known. I want to thank Councilor Ray. I have so much respect for him and for his tenacity. I've seen it time and time again. I saw it with the cell phone issue that we talked about, and what a great safety issue that is in our city. I wish we could enforce it better. I've also received many phone calls and emails and personal visits, even to my home, from community members expressing their opinion. We have received input from our former police chief, Chief Reynolds, and from our current police chief, Chief Portillo. And in knowing that it might come down to my vote, I have spent quite a bit of time studying documents that relate to these vehicles. But when I ran for mayor, I promised myself that I would do the very best I could to do the best for the interests of the town of Silver City and also for the residents of Silver City. So this has been a tough decision for me. But it's my decision that this ordinance is not in the best interest of Silver City, so I must vote against it. So the motion does not pass. Councilor Cummings?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for a short recess.
Okay, we have a motion for a break.
I second the motion.
Have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll take about a 10-minute break. Calling our meeting back to order. The next item is 11, new business. The first item under new business is 11A, the approval/disapproval of a special dispenser permit application and waiver of NMSA 1978 60-6B-10 for alcohol sales near a church for a beer garden at Golf Park for the LGBTQ Pride Fest on September 15, 2018, with alcohol service from noon to 9 p.m. Liquor license holder, Dahl Enterprises, LLC, DBAQ Southern Bistro, LLC, liquor license number 28098, 101 West College Avenue, Silver City, New Mexico, 88061. Is Mr. Quintana?
Hi, how's everybody? So the LGBT organization asked me if we could host their second annual Pride Fest at the park. We did so last year with our brewer's license, and this year we wanted to do it with our full liquor license. Still the same setup, same rules. There was no occurrences. Carded everybody when they came in, and we held it in the same spot last year on the basketball courts. The only difference is that we're doing it on the other side of the basketball court because there's more shade. So, yeah.
And you got your letter of waiver from?
I did. I finally got it. It was kind of a little bit of a mission at first in the beginning to get it, but it was just because the pastor was a little busy and he didn't have time to respond, and I didn't realize that I was short on time to not get in time for the council meeting. I thought I still would be able to get on the next council meeting, but wasn't available. But we did get the letter.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Kano?
Actually, my question is for Mr. Brown. You didn't sign the application. I was wondering why. If it was just
I was waiting for you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Do I hear a motion? Councilor Kano?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve of a special dispenser permit application and waiver of NMSA 1978-60-6B-10 for alcohol sales near a church for a beer garden at Golf Park for the LGBTQ Pride Fest on September 15, 2018, with alcohol service from noon to 9 p.m. Liquor license holder, Bell Enterprises LLC, doing business as Q Southern Bistro LLC. Liquor license number 28098, 101 West College Avenue, Silver City, New Mexico 88061.
Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that as read.
Thank you. Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is 11B, the approval/disapproval of notice of intent ordinance number 1271, an ordinance to approve a lease agreement between the town of Silver City and Washington Federal Savings and Loan pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 48, Article 2, Sections 48-20, etc. of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. Mr. Brown?
Member Council, as I discussed with you probably a few months ago, the lease for the Washington Federal Building will be up in 2 years. They do not have any more options, guaranteed options, to continue to get leases from the town of Silver City. As I discussed at that previous meeting, staff would like to have some time to identify some possible opportunities for reuses of the property, such as the Bank of the Washington Federal Building, which is home to the City Hall Annex right now. And we want to look at some possible reuses of the other side, the bank part, as well as the fact that once the lease is up, the town will be able to have access to the entire block on the other side of, was it 12th Street? At 12th Street and Pope, for some possible expansion of Golf Park to the other side. So I did discuss this information with the bank, and they also would like some additional time to possibly look for another site for the bank if we decide not to extend their lease for long term. So they did make a request to extend the lease for an additional 2 years, which would make it a total of 4 years from August 31st. And so, but because the additional 2 years would be more than $100,000 cost to them, value, I believe it's $112,000 for the 2 years. We do have to go through the ordinance process that is required under the lease and sale of town-owned property. So with that, if you have any questions.
Do I hear a motion? Councilor Kano?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve a notice of intent ordinance number 1271, an ordinance to approve a lease agreement between the town of Silver City and Washington Federal Savings and Loan pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 48, Article 2, Sections 48-20, etc. of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code.
Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second it in a bit.
Okay, a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, any discussion or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next is 11C, the approval/disapproval of notice of intent ordinance number 1272, an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Animals, Article 1, Section 6-1, definitions, and a new Section 6-15, keeping of bees prohibited, of the Code of Ordinance of the Town of Silver City. Councilman Smith, this is your ordinance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say that I have been working towards developing an ordinance about beekeeping in Silver City for a number of months, but a recent event has accelerated and we've prioritized that. But I do want to make some comments. First, I want to say that in general, I'm a big fan of bees, because without bees, we would not have the fruits, beans, and nuts that we most enjoy. Anything with a flower needs a pollinator, and bees are that worker bee. We want to support local farmers, and that means supporting pollinators, of which bees are a major part. I think it's important for just simplicity to think of bees as sitting in three categories. The first is the honeybee, which was brought to North America in the early 1600s. So people who are in agriculture and gardening here in North America have been working alongside bees for a long time. The regular, usually pretty docile honeybees, unless they're threatened, have been suffering from agricultural use of pesticides. Since 2007, abnormally high die-offs, which is like up to 70% of the hives of these honeybee colonies have been occurring in North America. So they're under threat, they're fragile. This has been dubbed colony collapse disorder. So if we want to eat fruit, beans, and nuts, we need to start thinking about how to work better with the bees. A second category of bees are native bees. I don't know if you saw in the Daily Press the article on Monday about researchers in northern New Mexico identifying native bees. But we have a rich diversity of native bees here in New Mexico, and they're extremely valuable and pollinators and widespread in the environment. And it's very rare, actually, that a native bee will bite, only if you step on it or swat it. What I understand is in that most cases they are individual livers. They don't they don't do hives and colonies except for bumblebees. The last category, and the one that is most concerned, I think, to the populace, are aggressive bees. And aggressive colonies are generally hybridized, Africanized bees. Now, what that means is that they are not completely the European honeybee. In the late 1980s, fairly recently, Africanized bees started showing up here in the U.S., coming from South America. Some bee breeders down in Brazil wanted to see if they could hybridize honeybees, European honeybees, with a type of hardy African bee. They were hoping to get gentle bees who could survive a variety of pests and weather with little loss of honey production. But what they got were bad-tempered, mean bees. And as often happened, those bad-tempered, mean bees escaped and started, romancing the other bees and hybridizing, and soon here we are. We have them up here. So these aggressive bees, that aggressive gene can be dominant in Africanized bees, and they can attack people. They can be aggressive. And they also tend to leave their hives kind of unexpectedly. The queen bee is the one who rules the hive, but the beekeeper has to manage the queens properly for good results. When a queen begins to fail or die, the hive will create their own queen, so you have to keep your eyes on it. And if that queen flies and mates with an Africanized bee, you're going to get mean bees. But if you are a beekeeper who can put a nice, docile, gentle, pregnant queen in there, within just less than 2 months, the whole hive will mimic her genetic makeup. And so there's an entire industry devoted to developing and selling gentle, sweet-tempered queen bees. I want to let you guys know that people have kept honeybees here in Grant County and Silver City for a long time. And there's an increase in gardening, interest in gardening and growing vegetable plots and developing small urban farms. And so there's been an interest in keeping honeybees too. But we've had an incident recently that I'm wondering if, Milo, if you're willing to come and speak about that.
Mayor, council, staff, good evening. We've had a couple of incidents recently. August 5th, we had an incident. My rescue units were paged out for a patient at the dog park on 12th Street who was being actively swarmed by bees. We arrived on scene, law enforcement was already there. The patient was in the 12th Street Park with a water hose spraying herself, and she stated she was still being stung. We removed her from the situation, got her into our rescue unit, and we evacuated the area. Several of my employees were stung as well. I'm not sure if the officer was stung. Another individual had been passing by the park, and he was swarmed and refused medical treatment and on the run. We relocated down the street, transported the patient to the hospital. Typically, we don't transport. That's Gila Regional's responsibility. The Gila Regional paramedics actually entered our truck because we were bee-free. We were without bees in our unit. We proceeded to the Gila Regional, and treatment was given at the hospital to the patient. She was stung just over 200 times. She did have a reaction to the stings. Now, that being said, several people in the area had stated that there was bee boxes or hives being tended by citizens in the area. Typically, when the fire department is called for these situations, it's for a migratory swarm. Migratory swarms will usually come into the city. They'll find a place to rest. They're usually fairly docile. They'll leave within 24 hours. We get paged out to calls concerning migratory swarms 3 or 4 times a year. We have a 3-tier process for the safety of the citizens at the fire department. We evacuate the area first and foremost and set up some containment so that no one's endangered. We try to leave it alone for 24 hours, and typically the bees will move on. If not, we consult with professionals. We have a series of professional trained beekeepers who have offered their services to the town. They charge us nothing. They'll come in, evaluate the hive or the swarm, whichever the case may be. They will attempt to extract it and move it to their professional locations outside of the city. And if we, at last and definitely least, the very last resort, is if we find an aggressive swarm, or the professionals we've consulted with tell us there's nothing that can be done, we will exterminate the swarm. This is a last-ditch effort. I think since 2006, we have done that twice. We don't have the training or the resources to be tasked with pest control. It's not in our realm of work, our scope of practice. Typically we provide medical assistance to those who have been swarmed, and that's the end of the story. I need to state that 5% of the population is allergic to bee stings, honeybee stings. That's a very small number. However, in the case that we had on August 5th, being stung that many times, that patient will now be allergic to bee stings as advised by the doctors. The fire department in no way, shape, or form wants to become the beekeeping task force for the city. And I would leave it to the council's good judgment to find some way in which to provide safety to the citizens, be it through regulation or ordinance. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the chief?
incident in which a person has been savagely stung over 200 times. So working on this ordinance has moved way up. And I'm going to say that the path that I've chosen to do is to initiate a notice of intent, which means essentially it opens the door for all kinds of discussion. So as we all well know, the first notice of intent as it's written is then open for discussion with subject matter experts, with people who are both strongly opposed and in favor of a particular issue to try to work towards some sort of resolution or some sort of ordinance that works for the majority of the town. Public safety is always going to be the biggest concern. Public safety is always going to be the biggest concern. So I do want to say that I did a bit of research to find out about swarm stings. Most swarm stings that I could find data on were identified as being wild swarms that were Africanized bees. So it's not common to have a honeybee swarm out and sting. It's often that a wild swarm will take up a colony living under a tree, in a tree, or under the porch of a vacant house. So there are places around Silver City where there might be wild bee hives. That doesn't mean that the person owning that property is actually cultivating the bees. So I'm putting forth the most stringent, kind of harsh notice of intent, because I know full well that will energize public discourse from a variety of viewpoints. I'm committed to having a public forum on this, and I'm committed to taking the time that it's going to require to really do an ordinance that will both work for the needs of being able to pollinate and maintain public safety. And I'm going to confess that my computer has just now restarted, and it's not going to actually restart because there's no Wi-Fi in this building. So, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to make a motion now, or do you want to wait for public comment?
Does the council have any questions for Councilman Amon Smith? Councilor Kano?
Should I wait after the motion? It's discussion about the contents. It's after the motion, right?
Yeah, after the motion, yeah.
No questions for council?
I'm going to wait as well.
I promised you that those of you who wanted to give public input on this ordinance would have a chance. So I will do that now. Once again, I'll ask you to, make your comments to the point. And first on the list was Susan Clare.
Thank you.
Could you move my...
Sure. My comments, I've got a written statement that I can read, and it takes 4 minutes. I request that I be permitted, since the ordinance has to do with my bees.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Ladner and councilors, regarding the August 5th bee stings in the dog park, first I'd like to apologize to the people who were stung and for the inconvenience the incident caused police and fire personnel. Prior to this incident, on any given day, these bees would forage in my garden, in neighborhood gardens and orchards, and not bother anyone. This time, it was clear the bees came from my hive because my beekeeping student and I saw them disperse from the hive. They had been totally calm while we inspected my other hive, located 2 feet away. Only when we removed the lid from this particular hive did they begin angrily flying around the immediate neighborhood. We immediately put the lid back on, and the hive was removed from the premises that evening. I've been a beekeeper for 10 years. I've spoken to several longtime beekeepers who agree that this incident was an anomaly. Yesterday, I spoke with one of my original mentors who has been keeping managed hives within Albuquerque for more than 20 years. He said he'd heard of only one similar incident in his 20 years as an active beekeeper. And that's where a hive that had been calm suddenly became angry, aggressive colony, or at least parts of it were aggressive. I was taught by and learned from the best New Mexico beekeepers, including the aforementioned mentor, as well as author and top bar hive expert Les Crowder. In 2014, the New Mexico Beekeepers Association asked me to develop and coordinate the first ever New Mexico Beekeepers Certification Program, which I did for 2 years. It was extremely successful and is still teaching and certifying beekeepers. Students are taught by experts in the best practices of urban beekeeping. Last summer, I founded the Granite County Beekeepers to form a community of beekeepers and, quote, friends of bees, unquote, to help each other, share information, and most important, teach the best practices of beekeeping through mentoring sessions and other activities. We've worked hard, often partnering with the local Audubon chapter, Gila Native Plant Society, and other nature-focused groups to educate residents about pollinators, advocate for pollinators, and encourage non-toxic weed control in local gardens. In the bee group meeting notes I sent out recently, and you should have all gotten that by email, I attached a file about the state of West Virginia's beekeeping permit program. That same email included a link to New York City's beekeeper registration program. Excuse me. I'm in favor of registering in-town beekeepers, identifying the locations of their hives and requiring their cooperation in following the best practices of beekeeping. This will go a long way in enhancing relationships between the town of Silver City and local beekeepers. The Grant County Beekeepers will gladly work with the town to develop a sustainable registration program. To help educate the public, our group hosted a table at Earth Day. In addition, I've given many presentations about honeybees for Audubon, Rotary, Montessori School, Hummingbird Festival, Silver City and Gila Libraries partnering with the Upper Gila Watershed Alliance. As I teach about honeybees, I point out the difference between a honeybee and a western yellowjacket, a wasp with similar coloration and often mistaken for a honeybee. I have already offered to do a brown bag lunch presentation for town employees, and that offer still stands. Typically, there's no way to know where bees come from, a managed hive or a feral colony. Feral bees have built countless in-town colonies in cinder block walls, under storage sheds, in metering boxes and other hidden locations. Even if you were to prohibit managed hives in town, what will you do about the countless feral colonies? Prohibiting managed hives will reduce the number of non-aggressive bees that pollinate our fruit trees and gardens. We need the bees to pollinate our gardens and orchards, which produce at least 1/3 of U.S. food crops. The recent article in the Silver City Press omitted important, relevant information. I've been in communication with the author of the article to do a follow-up article to fill in the gaps. Her calendar is full this week, so we're tentatively planning to meet next week. In closing, I sincerely hope this dog park bee incident can result in enhanced honeybee education, understandings, and monitoring. Silver City is a gem of a community, and on behalf of the Grant County Beekeepers, I can say that we want to protect this gem. Thank you very much.
Tim Sexton.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. I'm going to echo or start with some comments that Linda made. One of the best ways, and you can read about this if you go to the Utah Agricultural Extension website, but one of the best ways they recommend to controlling aggressive bees is to encourage more beekeepers to manage hives in the area. This produces, in fact, you're probably purchasing queens of the highest quality, and their drones go out in the area, mate, and end up diluting the bad DNA that's causing the aggressive behavior. If you were to prohibit or ban managed beehives in an area, that would open up the area to the completely infestation from all the feral hives that are out there. So there's to our benefit to encourage managed bees. And what I mean that is that beekeepers they have a list, they call it a list of best practices for beekeeping. In many states, this is like North Carolina where I came from, I was a beekeeper for 9 years. It's voluntary, and people practice best practices in North Carolina to end up with bees that are easy to work with. They've been talking about having a registration program like the state of West Virginia. West Virginia is leading the way, actually, which surprised me. I went to school there. But they require registration, and if you do register, you agree to follow best practices. It allows people from the state, from the governor, to inspect during working hours at any time they want to, and then they recommend corrective measures if needed. One of the benefits, which is unique for West Virginia, is that any beekeeper that agrees to this registration program is protected from any type of liability risk. So that they're trying to, the state is assuming all liability for any type of accidents. This is similar to the equine laws we have in our state, that anybody that participates in equine activities, horses, cannot be sued. Anyway, I'm going to finish with handing out an article. I've made 6 copies, and I'm going to give them to you if you don't mind. This is a study conducted at Stanford University, and they obtained data from the CDC, Center for Disease Control, of all fatal accidents from all animals, horses, cattle, dogs, including hornets, wasps, and bees. This purpose of this paper is to put in perspective the relative risk. And what's kind of interesting is that there's a very few actual fatalities from being stung by hornets, bees, and wasps, and they group it all together. And the deaths occur from people that are allergic. But there's almost twice as many deaths from people working, agricultural workers, working with horses and cattle. And the deaths from dogs attacking young children is similar to the risk of bee stings. Anyway, I just want to finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have one comment? If you do form a committee to work on the developing registration program, I'm willing to work with anybody who's interested.
Terry, Tim? Time?
I used all different variations of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Terry Chemme, President of Southwest New Mexico Audubon Society. I'm here to encourage you to pursue investigating this ordinance, and in that process, I think you'll find that you will be able to educate the population considerably. As Councilor Raymond Smith mentioned, there are many different types of bees. Southwest New Mexico Audubon Society has produced a brochure that says we need bees, birds, bees, and butterflies, and we've actually had the council and the mayor issue a proclamation naming Earth Day as Bird, Butterfly, and Bee-Friendly Silver City Day, because, bees are, as Councilor Raymond Smith mentioned, pollinators, and all of our food supplies depend on them. And there are tremendous diversity of native bees that live in Silver City and in the Grant County and in New Mexico, and so we would hope that you would use this opportunity to provide greater education about the value of bees, not just honeybees, which everybody's more familiar with, but also native bees. As part of our campaign for making Silver City bird, butterfly, and bee friendly, we've produced this brochure. I handed it out at the proclamation hearing back in April, and I'll leave additional copies of it here in case you've misplaced yours. But thank you for hearing me, and I'd also offer the services of Southwest New Mexico Audubon Society. You need to form a task force to study and figure out ways to educate the population about the value of bees. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, I think that's Overlock.
Chris Overlock. I'm a resident, and, and I sympathize with the people who were attacked, police, fire, and that, poor person who got stung 200 times. I mean, that's not a good thing, and I'm not going to argue otherwise. But I'm also relieved to hear Councilperson Amon Smith's call that this is a point of discussion, because when you put it in bold type, it looks more like a threat. But yeah, I'm a friend of bees, and I don't maintain any beehives, but I recently bought this book, Bees in Your Backyard, and it's one of the co-authors is Olivia Messenger Carroll, and she's actually going to be speaking at the state conference being held in Silver City for the Native Plant Society coming up in September. And I would really encourage more discussion and study of what we're dealing with than just trying to ban beehives in the city. I moved here from Bisbee, Arizona, where we have the killer bee guy. He's Reed Booth. He's been on Good Morning America and TV nationwide, and he goes out and removes the feral colonies of Africanized bees that can be dangerous. There's no disputing that, but there's also somebody, probably more than one, but one guy in town who has a beehive, in a part of town, Kerry Walters, and he's probably had it for over 20 years, and no problem. So I just think, let's step back a moment and try to look at this as civilly as you dealt with that last big issue. Beekeeping is allowed in the city of Tucson, and I didn't check every city, but they are. And one thing in this book and elsewhere is, most of the bees are partially Africanized. I mean, there's no getting around it. And in this book, there's 4,000 species of bees in the U.S. and Canada, and 20,000 in the world. So I guess I'm just saying that we really need to look into a lot more, and I would, if you want to get in touch with this author, I'd contact Elroy Limmer of the Gila Native Plant Society, and, really, because there's a lot of information and it is changing a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I hear a motion? Councilman Smith?
I'm going to read off of the agenda because I don't have the actual ordinance in front of me. My computer has stopped. So I move to approve of notice of intent, ordinance number 1272, and ordinance amending Chapter 6, Animals, Article 1, Section 6-1, Definitions, and a new Section 6-15, Keeping of Bees Prohibited, of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Silver City.
Okay, second, Councilman Madison?
Mr. Mayor, second motion stated.
Okay. Do we have any discussion?
We should have discussion.
I do.
Councilor Ray?
Councilor Remington Smith, there are veterans that do keep bees. And being a veteran, it's something that's soulless.
Yes.
So I would take that into consideration for you to make more studies on that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Cullen?
Mr. Mayor, I'm concerned about Section 6-15, keeping of bees prohibited. Specifically, the part that says the word keep shall include permitting the existence of natural hive upon one's property. A violation of this provision shall be subject to penalties described in Section 4. My concern with this is before we agree to this, I'd like to see a little bit of research myself about, A, how many natural live hives we have in Silver City, just an estimate of how many there are. And then also, my other concern is what the price of removing a natural hive would be. The reason I ask that is because if a low-income senior has one in the tree and they don't know how to deal with it, are they going to have to use the money that they get for Social Security for that month to remove that hive? Because they don't want to be penalized, and that's a huge concern for me, because I'm sure that there are going to be plenty of people that have natural hives in their property that they never even had to deal with or even considered until now.
That's a good point. I'll write that down. Thank you.
Councilor Madison?
Mayor, actually, both Councilor Ray and Councilor Kona brought up two things that are on my list about veterans keeping bees, and I wanted to make sure that that is acknowledged, and that it is a source of solace for them. And I have the same concern about the hives. I want to be full disclosure here, I am allergic to bees. I do carry an EpiPen. And I would not have made it to the hospital if I had been stung that way. So I would like to see a lot more research done on because I personally have no idea. I mean, I love bees, but I stay away from them, and hope that they stay away from me. But I think what I'd like to know is, I don't understand how many hives can be in a community, how many need to be in a community to make sure that the more natural hives are calmer, as has been expressed. What is the distance that honeybees go from the hive? Because if we have established hives that veterans and others have already established, what happens when you move that hive somewhere else? I mean, is it going to cause a die-off? Because I understand the importance to the environment. At the same time, weigh it with public safety, and, if these hives are not within an area that are traveled, that it's not next to a public school, or, if there's not enough distance between that, because we have rural areas of town. But, how does that all fit in? And I do appreciate the request, even by the folks that do keep bees, about registration. Because then we do know that it's like other things. We have registration for the dogs and cats. Not that everybody does it, but I'm just saying that it would be a way to encourage the principles of good beekeeping. So while I seconded this, if it does pass, it's only at the NOI stage. It is not set in stone. But I personally feel like I need to do more research because of this fear that I've had since I was a child when I swelled up and had to be rushed to the hospital. So, I want to be full disclosure. I do have that, but I also understand the critical importance that they play in people's lives and in our lives on a daily basis of eating and, having the fruits and nuts and things that that do require that. So, thank you.
Food chain. The food chain.
The food chain
is important.
Any other comments?
Let me make a comment.
Councilwoman Smith?
I've been gathering for a few months example publications from other municipalities, both in New Mexico and outside of New Mexico, and there's really been a real wide variation. Some of them, like New York City, let's be honest, you can keep bees in your basement or on your rooftop, and so it's assumed everywhere. But they also have a dedicated bee professional who goes around and, we don't have that kind of knowledge. And some, they have a thing that says it must be 300 feet from the closest building. There's ones that say 500 feet from a park or a school. So there's all kinds of examples out there. And I agree. I was dedicated, and if this NOI passes, I am dedicated to working with experts, with veterans, with all kinds of folks to really develop one that is really good. I just want to signal that we are working on it. And the cost of removal, I think, is a really important point. If we have the cooperation, which I just heard from the beekeepers and the Audubon Society, people who know how to remove bees safely, perhaps we can work out a way so that then the extension service, which needs to be really involved. There's a master, beekeeping guide extension service. we can involve all those people, I think we can come to a really important and useful way of looking at urban beekeeping in Silver City. And I know that there have been hives here for decades. People have been keeping bees for a long, long time in Silver City.
They're good honey.
And they're good honey.
My honey.
Yeah. Good white honey.
My honey.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, this is, my intention is not to say, and certainly not to threaten, but to really kind of make it violent enough to get people talking.
Any other comments, or, so...
We have a motion and a second.
So you plan to do a lot of community involvement, and we won't see this coming back with the minimum number of days, right?
I promise you that this will be a fully engaged process, because that's important.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next is agenda item 11D, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2018-20, a resolution of the Town of Silver City ratifying a certain agreement between the Town of Silver City and the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments dated August 8, 2017, and authorizing the execution of same by the proper official of the Town of Silver City. Mr. Brown?
On an annual basis, the Town of Silver City has to, well, all member agencies with the Council of Governments has to authorize a new annual agreement and appoint our representatives to the Council of Governments. It also agrees to pay the annual dues. In our case, it's based on population. In our case, it's $6,189. And they do provide all the services that are listed in the scope of services from A to O. They also provide a lot more services than just those. So with that, if you have any questions, myself and Priscilla.
Councilor Bedison?
I do have a brief.
I don't know what I did. I do have a quick question. The actual new business says dated August 8th, 2017. Shouldn't it be 2018?
Yes, 2018 to 2019.
And the next question is as had been appointed in the March meeting by the mayor of the folks that are supposed to be the member, the first alternate and the second alternate.
Right.
I just want to clarify that that's Alex Brown as the member, Peter Pena as the alternate one, correct? And Cynthia, well, me, as the alternate two, so that would be included in the motion.
That's my understanding, yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm following along what we've done before.
Yes, that's correct.
So is it permissible to change the date to the appropriate year?
Yeah, that's just ministerial.
Okay, good, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, have a motion. We need a motion.
Yeah, I have to do that.
We have a motion.
And I lost, okay.
Councilor Edison?
Yes. I move to approve resolution number 2018-20, a resolution of the Town of Silver City ratifying a certain agreement between the Town of Silver City and the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments dated August 14th, is what it says. I'm reading off the actual resolution, not what's on the, that's appropriate to read the resolution itself, not what's on the agenda?
Correct.
Okay. Dated August 14th, 2018, and authorizing the executive of the same by the proper official of the Town of Silver City with appointing, per the agreement on page 2, number 2B, Alex Brown as member, Peter Pena as alternate 1, and Cynthia Ann Bedison as alternate 2.
Okay, have a motion. Is there a second? Councilor Amy Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion as stated.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait, is this a resolution? Wait.
Oh, no, it has to be a...
Oh, roll call, I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead, please.
Councilor Benson?
Aye.
Councilor Amon Smith? Aye. Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilor Khan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is 11E, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2018-21, a resolution adopting the 2020-2024 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, ICIP. Mr. Brown, who's going to present this? You will? Okay.
Mayor and Council, this is an annual requirement by the state of New Mexico for any funding that we may request from them. All of the staff from all the department heads have reviewed and updated their projects, added and deleted projects that have been completed, and we have also had a public hearing that nobody attended. So, but with that, we've got all these projects that, the ones that are really the priority are the top 10 for fiscal year, 2020. Those are the ones that we've sort of identified funding sources that we've actually been working on, and are the projects that we usually are able to get accomplished. The rest of them are needs, but they're more of a wish. We haven't identified funding sources and how they're actually going to be done yet. So with that, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Councilor Benson?
No questions. Just a quick comment. I wanted Councilor Ray to know that I had an individual come up to me at a recent memorial service and specifically state that the town needed to do more for street and improvement drainage on Chihuahua Hills. And I told him that I believed it was in the upcoming in this. So there are folks out there that are making sure that all of us know that they require that. And I said that it's generally on every ICIP on an annual basis. So I wanted to show them. And then I did have an individual on, okay, I've got to find it now. I don't know where it went, but on Cactus Street. Remind me again about the Cactus Street sidewalks and finishing that area, and I know that it's on here in 2020.
Yes.
But I apparently did not star it, but I just want to say that I know that it's in the 2020 list. It's not necessarily in the top 10, but it is on the list if there is funding that comes forward.
I believe, isn't that the one we got the legislative allocation for, or was that Yucca?
We got legislative, I thought it was 32nd Street that we got sidewalks.
32nd Street.
Yeah.
32nd Street was the year before. This last fiscal year, we got $125,000 for that.
Oh, okay. Great. I mean, I'm not sure, I guess, for
Yeah,
some reason
32nd
it
Street
didn't...
is 2 years ago legislative allocation, which is being completed right now. If
Yeah.
you've been on 32nd Street, they should be done in the next week or so. The legislative allocation for the next one, we still haven't even got the agreement from
You still haven't gotten it from
Still
them?
haven't gotten it since the session ended. But yes, that was the one project that I made a priority to get this year.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that I forgot that, because I did, like Councilman spoke, I thought it was 32nd Street, so...
No, 32nd Street was last year. But Councilor Ray, the Chihuahua Street project is our CDBG project. Our application is for that project.
That's what I thought. Okay, good. All right, thank you.
That's the one by the park, isn't it? Any other questions, Councilor Amon Smith?
Well, I'm going to offer an amendment.
Okay.
So I spoke with Manager Brown, and I'm going to offer an amendment and ask for a project to be added. This is the next priority project from the Silver City Bicycle Master Plan, and the project is described as 12th Street between Alabama and Pope, and maybe even beyond, to stripe with bike lanes, eliminate some parking spaces on the north side, transition to sharrows and travel lanes for approaches to Pope, consider bike lanes, because this is a big street, 12th Street. And in rural bike lanes, we could consider sharrows between Pope and Main Street and provide wayfinding. So Mr. Brown has agreed to put that on the ICIP. So I don't see the person I need to talk to, but we'll make sure that gets...
Yeah, Priscilla was out of town today, so that's what I'm doing.
And that's just that I want to make sure, since we worked on this plan, that we keep a priority project on the ICIP at a time.
Yeah, we did do the first one on that list so far. But
they're being worked on, it's being worked on, so So with that, I would like to offer a motion. I move to approve resolution number 2018-21, a resolution adopting the 2020 to 2024 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, the ICIP.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Yes, the second motion stated.
Councilor Benson, any discussion? Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Benson?
Aye.
Councilor Amon Smith?
Aye.
Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilor Kano? Aye.
Motion carries. Next agenda item is 11F, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2018-22, a resolution adopting the 2020-2024 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, ICIP, for the Silver City Senior Center. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I got in contact with Mr. Marshall here about, I think it was last week, and I asked him if he could go with me to the senior place, and he did, and we met there, and I showed him some of the stuff that was on the inside of the senior building and on the outside, and it needs a lot of repair, both on the inside and the outside. And I also showed him the parking, where they had their barbecues and all that. There's a lot of trees that have been down from the winds and all that. And he asked me if, since we will have a territorial charter day every district, he asked me if I would do it. And I said yes, because it was on my mind to do it on that, whenever he has the time to do it. He also told me he was going to talk to Mr. Brown about the senior place. And it does need a lot of work. And I believe he said that the city was liable for it, right? To get funding for it?
Yes. The state requires that we have a separate ICIP for the Senior Citizen Center, because they get a separate pot of funding that they get for Senior Citizen Center from the GEO bonds, I believe. And yes, our facility maintenance people went up there. HMS facility maintenance people went up there. They're required under our current lease agreement to pay for any repairs under $5,000. We're responsible for anything over $5,000, which are basically a capital improvement. Like the trees and the down trees and stuff like that wouldn't be something that you would qualify under the ICIPs. So that'd be more maintenance. I was told by our facility maintenance director, foreman, that about the paint work and stuff inside that needed to be done, and he's been working with the HMS facility maintenance staff to get that addressed. So there's a lot of those small things that we can get addressed that isn't included here. This is more like the stucco and the barbecue stuff that you're talking about. Those types of things are more expensive, and they are covered under the $195,000 that we're looking at here for this next year. That's what is covered under that.
And also, can you put in the plans, maybe we could put in the plans to paint to the inside, and there's a couple of, I don't know, maybe bat holes on the
that still would be covered under maintenance, so yes, that's what Eddie's working on.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Benson?
Just a quick question. Could you just refresh my memory? Did we receive anything last year? Because I know that, did we do a senior citizen center ICIP last year? Did we receive anything?
Yes, last year was the first year we had to.
We did.
Because although we own the Senior Citizen Center, before I started, there was a nonprofit that the town had running the Senior Citizen Center, and then about 5-6 years ago, they went under and the county took it over. So the county was doing the ICIPs. When the nonprofit was operating it, the ICIP wasn't required. When the county took it over, it was required, so they did it for us. And then now that we own it, we have to do the ICIP because HMS is not a governmental entity and they can't submit one. So we have to do it since we own it. And yes, we did receive some money, but the problem with the money that was received last year, it wasn't based on the ICIPs we did last year. It was based on the ICIPs from the year before when the county did it. But the county, the employees that put the ICIP and the project together for them does not work with the county anymore, so we're trying to figure out what it was for. And I think we've almost got it locked down, don't we? Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. Is that on? Yes. So I just wanted to address that because I've been working with Alex in developing the capital outlay for next year. There is a current application that was submitted in the spring of this year that is now going for the vote in November. The other thing I want to mention is that it is a requirement under the Area Agency on Aging to bring an individual to come down and do a complete assessment of the facility. So I did do that prior to the actual Township City taking back and HMS taking over the programs, and so now we're following whatever was stated in the assessment. So keep in mind that one of the things that we did apply for this year was additional vehicles, because those vehicles are tied into the facility. So that's part of the plan, and the other part is making sure that we have the ADA accessible doors, because, there's no push button on the outside of that, so that's being taken care of. That's moving for the vote in November. And so they did a lot of work with the current award that was from last year. So they're doing some of those improvements, which a lot of that work tied back into the assessment dealing with kitchen issues. So we're also looking at, and this application that was applied for was to actually improve the flooring right there where the ice machine is, because it's severely cracked. And then we have other opportunities that we're looking for future funding as well. So we're kind of back on task with the order of the priorities to make sure that it falls in line with all the requirements.
So can you clarify just a little further, because that was like GO bond for senior centers in there, and then there's the ICIP, and then there's money that we had before, just to make sure we understand where all the different pots of money are going in, that this is a request to the legislature. It is not part of the upcoming GO bond.
So, just for clarification, the capital improvement plan is for planning purposes only. When you submit your capital outlay application for senior programs that happens in the spring, they will look to see if your project is listed on the capital improvement plan, gives you additional points, and it moves you up the ranking. So that allows for those projects that are up in the higher rankings in this particular year will have to go out for the vote in November. And then in the off year, that's when they just go off the ranking, and it's based off the capital outlay award. So that's kind of how it is, and it kind of rotates. And then one year it's critical needs only, and those are the only things you can apply for, and it has to be a critical need. So those are the things that we are doing, and I've been assisting Alex in doing those applications for those seniors, for that senior center. So, and I'll continue to do that now that I got the hang of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any more questions? Do I hear a motion?
I have a quick comment.
Councilman Smith?
I just have a quick comment, which is this is the reason that we have an agreement with that COG. Because someone knows everything. All right, thank you.
Okay, do I hear a motion? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve of resolution number 2018-22, a resolution adopting the 2020-2024 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, ICIP, for the Silver City Senior Center.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilor Connor?
I'll second that motion as stated.
Motion second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please, Ann.
Councilor Kano.
Aye.
Councilor Ray.
Aye.
Councilor Anderson. Aye. Councilor Benson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next agenda item is 11G, the approval/disapproval of an agreement between the town of Silver City and Local 2430 International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, from July 1, 2018 to June 30, 2021. Mr. Brown?
This is, you've got a summary of the negotiated changes to the fire contract. The monetary changes have already been approved in the budget that you passed at the last council meeting. So all of that is taken care of. So this is just to formalize that so that they can actually get the raises. And then there are some other operational and policy changes in the manual that are summarized there. If you have any questions, I'm open to the questions.
Any questions? Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Kanu?
I move to approve of an agreement between the town of Silver City and Local 2430 International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second that as read.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 11H, the approval/disapproval of the cancellation of August 28, 2018 Town Council meeting due to the New Mexico Municipal League's annual conference being held that same week. Both myself and Councilor Edison will be attending that meeting. Are there any questions from the council? Councilor Edison?
I just want to ask Manager Brown and the clerk, we don't have any business pending for that day?
No, we don't.
Okay, with that in mind, thank you. With that, any other questions? With that in mind, do I hear a motion? Councilor Edison?
Mr. Mayor, I move to cancel the town council meeting of August 28, 2018.
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion to stand.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Councilor Ray has asked for the floor for a few minutes, so I will turn some time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor. This is my last meeting. I resign. I try to do the best I could, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. I have enjoyed all of you guys. I will hold it dearly. But sometimes you have to see the writing on the wall. Mr. Scaven, thank you. Mr. Brown, you. The rest of you right here. The chief, and of course, the guy I like to pick on all the time, Mr. Fisher. Thank you guys. It's been a rough ride. It's been a good ride. I think it's time for me to step down. This is my last meeting. Thank you.
This concludes the business of the town of Silver City. Do I hear a motion?
Okay, stand. Mr. Mayor, move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We are adjourned.